got 6 chambers. You got 1 bullet. So what's the odds? You do the math. When he pulled the trigger, he pulled it more than 1 time and ended up shooting himself. He ended up shooting himself, and I heard that after he did it,
Dennis Martinez was a good kid from a solid 2-parent home. Skateboarding was the first big thing to rock his life. Other things, both good and bad, would soon follow.
I came from a good house. Mom and Dad stayed together forever.
I remember Dennis from when he came up as a kid, and he was like really like a, he was kind of supposed to be like one of the next big things.
Riding up this huge ramp that was so high, he went all the way to the top and started coming down, and he pretty much had a kind of intensity that made us worry about him.
Dennis soon became a master of vertical, street, and
I just
downhill.
remember watching, thinking, even if I could do his tricks, I won't be able to have what he has because of the absolute sort of ease and zen-like non-thought you gave it. I was greatly impacted, so it's amazing being next to you now.
Dennis Martinez was one of the best San Diego skaters coming out of the 70s.
But you guys came in force at that contest, and that was the first time I saw, wow, that's the real thing.
Get going in my professional career. I think that started at the end of 1976, 1977. I started getting sponsorships, started getting paid. Cover the magazine or the centerfold, or you had multiple sponsors paying you at one time. Once you learned how to work the circuit, whatever clothes you wear, you could get paid. Whatever safety equipment you wore, you could get paid. Depending on how good your board sold.
By the mid-1970s, Dennis was in his teens and in his prime. Everything came together for him in the World Championships of Skateboarding when he prevailed over the best in the world.
Still in high school, I was making a grip of money. I mean, it was the first time that I could ever go buy a car, pay cash for it. You have to be 18 to rent. But I walked up to the landlord and I flashed hundreds of dollars a bill, and I think I paid for a full year in advance for my apartment.
Switch it around, whatever I feel like doing, I do. Right now, for me, it's really happening. And I'm just gonna stick in there and push it all the way as long as I can until whatever happens.
By the mid-60s, the counterculture had moved from beer to pot. By the mid-70s, a stronger substance was on the rise.
I think I was 15 years old when they sent me to Oregon. This guy paid for my way to go out there. I won't mention his name, but I went to his house and he had a trash can filled to the top full of cocaine. And so I remember I'm only 15. I couldn't even leave my hotel room, I was so high. After the World Championships, he spent his whole winnings on dope. We just sat in a hotel room for the whole weekend and just did up thousands of dollars worth of dope. It gives you this false sense of being a Superman. They taste death every single time. Every time that you get high, you're at the brink of death. That was my life from 1980 to 1996. After I progressed from snorting that I wasn't getting high enough anymore, my neighbor that I grew up with turned me on to the needle. The year was 1980.
I kind of turned him on to it. I was smoking weed and drinking, and then speed came along, and I learned how to use the needle, and I turned Dennis onto that, got him hooked on it.
But when he described to me the type of high that it was, and I was already spun out of dope, I was willing to try it just to see what it was like. And I can tell you this, the first time that it happened, the first time that he drew the blood back, the first time that he injected it into me, I was hooked.
He got into it pretty heavily, really heavily, I mean, more than me, and he would show up in my place left and right and go, come on, hit me, hit me, hit me.
You gotta hit me up, you gotta hit me up. That's all I could think about. I remember banging on his trailer all the time, bugging him at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, all the time. I disappeared from the face of the earth.
He went Troppo, went over the line.
Talk about rising to the top and then disappearing like that, that was me. Lost everything, lost respect. Nobody wanted to hire me anymore. I had no more sponsorship. My career, everything was over. I packed a gun all the time, all the time. I mean, if I went to a party, I had a stub-nose 38 in my pocket. I remember so many times fools coming up to me and wanting, to push my buttons. I had a 38 or a 9mm or a 22, and I drove around in my Volkswagen bus. I had a semi-automatic Beretta shotgun. I remember meeting this one guy, and he was a youngster, younger than me, and he had a 38 stub nose, and he used to put the bullet in the chamber and spin it, and that's what they call Russian roulette. And you put it up to your head and you pull the trigger. You got 6 chambers. You got 1 bullet. So what's the odds? You do the math. When he pulled the trigger, he pulled it more than one time and ended up shooting himself. He ended up shooting himself, and I heard that after he did it, he stood up and walked. It took a couple steps before he died, and just think, I would have been there. I would have been there in the hotel with him doing that. He's not here. He was 19 years old. He was 19 years old when it took his life. We were so spun out on dope, we didn't care. Man, people just don't know what dope does. Dope stands for death or prison eventually.
These cops had drawn their guns. There was probably, I don't even remember how many cop cars there. They were going in, and I remember crying to them, looking at them, saying, that's my brother. He's not gonna do anything. And I remember one of the officers saying, if your brother has a gun, we're gonna kill him.
I've lost so many of my friends. I'm telling you right now, one of them, she died in my arms. She was 7 months pregnant. She was shot through the neck. And as her eyes were closing, I was shaking her, telling her, please don't die. I love you, please. Stay, please. And when the guy came back to get the gun to kill me and my friend, to get rid of the witnesses, man, you just don't know. And when you lose your friends, you gotta live with it for the rest of your life. And you hear that little voice saying that you should just take your life, it'd be better for everybody. Just do everybody a favor and take your life. And I took 250 pills. And I remember swallowing maybe 25 at a time, and they would just pop out of my mouth, and I was swigging it down with a beer and just taking all of it down to me. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, and I'm crying, and I'm talking to my mom, telling her what I did, and I think I collapsed at that time. And the next thing you know, I remember having my stomach pumped. The second time that I OD'd was accidental. It landed me back in the hospital. 30 minutes after I was released, I went back to shooting dope. Next thing you know, I'm laying down on the carpet with a gun to the back of my head, and I'm starting to mouth off to the guys, and they kick me. They kicked me in the back of the head, smashed my face down, and told me not to move. I don't know what happened, but I got away. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and 2 stories, head first, out of the window and ran. I left everything. Didn't care who was around me. I was gonna get high. There was one time that I came down here, and they thought that I had robbed a big shipment of heroin. So it was just me and 2 guys with a 38 stub nose behind my head, and they were gonna kill me.
He looked like a heavy meth user. He was difficult to follow in conversation. He was pretty far gone.
Dennis was probably too far gone for us to waste our time on. And at that point, we really didn't think that there was much hope for Dennis.
The whole world was closing in on him.
The noose was getting tighter. So I left California for 5 years.
He started having problems in Colorado, where the SWAT team came and actually kicked down the front door. Trouble would follow him wherever he would go.
I remember going to family functions and sitting down with them and then nodding out because I'd been up for so long. I put my mom and dad through hell. I put them through hell. Never knowing when the phone was gonna ring that, hey, Mrs. Martinez or Mr. Martinez, would you come down to the county morgue?
Toughest thing about my job is notifying the next of kin of a sudden traumatic and unexpected death.
My husband and I spent many years, day and night, waiting for phone calls that somebody had killed Dennis.
1996, September 5th, it was my last run.
Dennis went through, probably been on a 3 or 4 day drug binge, and I knew something was wrong, terribly wrong. He was crying, and he was in a corner, just tucked in a corner in his room.
I knocked on the door, and I hear this voice come across. Yeah. How can you come up from that type of sitting position, flat on the floor like this, and you just move up? It made me feel that something had manifested.
That night I met the devil that was eating inside my brother. I mean, was throwing him around the room.
He tell me, right there, it's right there, right by you, Mom, right by you.
Dennis had believed that he had killed someone. My mother and father did come over to the house, and they were gonna take him to the church.
He was at his very last straw. I just saw a lot of anguish in his face, and he wasn't looking at me, he was looking at the ground, and he had been crying, you could tell. I realized real quickly that he was non-receptive, and every time I'd asked him a question, he was very agitated. He basically looked up, and this is the first time he had eye contact with me, and he said, "What are you talking about?" I says, "Dennis, what do you hear?" He said, "I hear the clock. What are you talking about?" "I hear the clock." I said, "In the same way that you now have the discipline to hear the ticking of the clock, you now know that God, in the same way, has been speaking to you, and He has a plan for your life, and that there was this transforming moment, that he was never the same." And I had never seen Dennis Martinez look back.
There was a definite change. Dennis was never the same.
My life has changed forever now because of one right decision in my life.
After getting clean and sober, Dennis launched a campaign to help others. He found the rush he sought in dope as soon as he moved beyond it.
Prison for going on 21 years now.
6 years, going on 7.
20 years. On 185 to life.
I'm serving 11 life sentences. They say that I'll never be home again.
Here at Calipatria State Prison, we have over 4,200 inmates. 80% of those inmates won't be going home.
I'm a volunteer prison chaplain at a level 4 prison.
My dad loved me very much.
No matter how lost, all souls can come home.